Hello and welcome to an India Today special broadcast from the strife-torn Ukrainian capital Kiev. I'm Gaurav Sawant. Over the course of this bulletin, we will get you the latest from what's happening in Kiev, across Ukraine, and of course the talks that were held between Belarus and Ukraine. The talks haven't been successful, but what is ominous is a warning that has come from Russia asking all civilians, not just foreigners, not just Indian students, but all civilians and non-combatants to leave Kiev as quickly as possible. There is an apprehension that there could be intensification of operations. Over 100 hours of Russian strikes into Ukraine. Russia still not in control either of the second largest city, Kharkiv, or the largest city, Kiev. And does that mean over the next couple of days, Russia will pound Kiev? Massive artillery, missile and rocket attacks before Russian ground troops move in. We bring you our top story.
Mind-numbing images of war. Russia relentlessly assaulting Ukrainian cities. Outflanked Ukrainian troops hitting back with all their might. Suffering damages, but bruising the aggressor superpower. Heavy war broke out for control of Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv. Bodies of Ukrainian civilians were seen lying on the streets of the once bustling city, now lying in ruins. After a day of relentless missile, tank and rocket attacks, gut-wrenching images show a lone Ukrainian soldier's body lying in the war zone. After heavy fighting in some of the biggest cities, Russian missiles continued to target civilians and residential complexes. A devastating attack on a high-rise with a missile exploding into a huge ball of fire sent shockwaves. A deadly missile attack took place at a residential building in Chernihiv, 50 kilometers north of the capital city, Kiev. 2 floors were seen burning in the aftermath. Ukraine showed off its counter-strike capability, using armed drones to take out a Russian missile column. The drone is seen firing payload to obliterate the advancing Russian missile battery on the ground. Donetsk region of Ukraine saw massive street fighting and heavy resistance. Military tanks were rolling down the streets in one of the largest cities, parts of which are under rebel control and under Russian occupation. Russian flags were seen on administrative buildings. While Kiev has been fighting hard, it is now paying a heavy price, with destruction, rubble and missile splinters seen all around. Damaged streets, neighborhoods and buildings show the ferocity of the Russian assault and Ukraine's fight back.
No bread, is here because there are no supply, no new supply, and everything that used to be here, people are trying to buy, and there is not much panic, but the feel of anxiety that people really need to stock up on the produce. And for example, you can see, yes, that I am right now trying to look for a bread, and there is no bread of no type, and the lines are pretty huge and long.
India Today saw the price paid by children of Ukraine. An exclusive trip inside the city's largest children's hospital showed kids injured in the war, battling for life.
Todos los ucranianos, incluidos los médicos y los pacientes, nos hemos unido para superar este arduo camino.
И я хочу сказать, что несмотря на то, что мы постоянно находимся в убежище.
This was main surgeon here in the children's hospital, and she was telling about the kind of injuries the children coming to this hospital and how they are coping up with the situation.
I thought this guy is a Russian militia, a civilian Russian militia, and they pinned him on the ground, and look at the reaction of the press here. These are the journalists from almost 30 countries around me, and look how they're reacting. I put it again, the camera onto the crowd right now. Look at this. Thought this guy.
India Today has also captured the dramatic capture of an alleged Russian militia invader by the Ukrainian troops after he infiltrated into the city.
I put it again, the camera onto the crowd right now. Look at this.
How long before Kiev sees end to the war mayhem? With Gaurav Sawant and Rajesh Parmar in Ukraine, Bureau Report, India Today.
As thousands attempt to leave Kiev, there are two cities that are directly in the line of Russian fire. The national capital, Kiev, and Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv. For the past 100 hours, Russian forces have been relentlessly pounding Kharkiv, initially claiming that they were in control of Kharkiv. But Ukraine's governor insisted, the governor of Kharkiv insisted that they had cleansed the city of Russian invaders. These pitched battles, the artillery assault, the armor assault and missile attacks on Kharkiv continue. Now, let's get you a timeline of the attack on Kharkiv.
This is how Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv, looked like less than 20 days ago. After over 100 hours of being under siege, this is how the streets of Kharkiv looks now. In the beginning of February, citizens were seen storming the streets, and on February 27th, dead bodies seen lying on the same roads. So how did Ukraine's second largest city go from this to that? The image that marked the beginning, day one of Russia's full-blown invasion of Ukraine. This hazy CCTV footage would mean the beginning of the siege on Ukraine and its cities. The very same night, Russia began pounding Kharkiv. Several blasts were reported. Smoke engulfed the Kharkiv skyline. Residents of Kharkiv took refuge in an underground metro station, fearing shelling after a missile hit a residential building, injuring one person. This was the beginning of impact on people. Residents began fleeing Kharkiv, leaving homes and personal belongings. From this point on, Kharkiv began to witness actual invasion. Destroyed multiple rocket launcher Grad left in the middle of the road. Body of a soldier in Russian uniform laying near it. Residential buildings damaged. Windows broken as heavy shelling hit Kharkiv hard. Four days after Russia's invasion, the office of Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky said Russian forces blew up a gas pipeline in the country's second largest city, even as Russia's invasion continued. Videos shared by the Ukraine Special Communication Service showed fire and smoke rising from the facility in Kharkiv, with the government warning that smoke from the explosion could cause an environmental catastrophe. The relentless bombing did not deter the spirit of Ukrainians in the second largest city. Citizens took up arms to defend their land. Russian army vehicles were seen smashed, damaged and even set on fire in what was turning out to be fierce street fighting between Ukraine and Russia on the streets of Kharkiv. On day 5 of Putin's invasion, after Russia claimed Kharkiv was on the brink of falling to the invasion, Ukraine claimed Kharkiv is still under their control and that it has expelled Russian troops. But the aftermath is this. Bodies seen lying on the streets of the country's second largest city. The Battle of Kharkiv is key for Putin. Kharkiv played a particularly important role in shaping Ukraine during and after World War I. It served as the first capital of the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. Today, Ukrainians are resisting the fall of Kharkiv, but the battle is far from over. Bureau Report, India Today.
It's not just the forces that the Russians have on ground, but the forces that they've amassed will show you the true extent of Russia's preparations for this assault, not just aimed at Kiev, but across Ukraine. India Today has accessed Maxar images that show the number of Russian troops, tanks, armored personal carriers and other war machinery lined up for the offensive, and an offensive that's aimed at the Ukrainian capital, Kiev. Ukraine is systematically being targeted from multiple sides. There are forces that are moving in from the south, from the north, from the east. The only place that's safe as of now is the west, and that is where most people you see behind me are headed.
Day 5 of the conflict and a relentless Russia is not done yet. Ukraine says 4,500 Russian soldiers are dead in counter-offensive. But the Russian government has ordered more boots on the ground. Satellite images show fresh Russian ground troops moving towards Kiev, the besieged capital city of Ukraine. Satellite shots show long Russian columns stretching up to 5 kilometers advancing to Kiev. Hundreds of military vehicles, tanks, infantry units, artillery batteries, missile cells are all part of the fearsome Russian onslaught. Russia is also using dirty tricks, deploying the fearsome troops of Chechen mercenaries known for their brutality. The man entrusted to execute Putin's plans is the leader of Russia's Chechnya region, Ramzan Kadyrov. Bureau Report, India Today.
People are out on the streets showing their support and solidarity with Ukrainians. These are countries that once were under the red curtain of the USSR. And their leaders are also standing by them.
First of all, we must stand together with Ukraine. Because Ukraine is our protection now. They are fighting for us too. And we need support for Ukraine, and this support should be organized. We need a mechanism, well coordinated. I think that European Commission should organize this process together with whole Europe. And also it's very important to talk about evacuation mechanism for women, children and injured people. And in this process also should participate European Commission together with United Nations.
It's not all empty words either. The Czech Republic, for instance, is sending more arms and ammunition to Ukraine to help it counter Russian invasion. Its defense ministry committed to send machine guns, submachine guns, assault rifles, pistols and ammunition worth $8.6 million.
Dobré odpoledne, dámy a pánové.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I have come here primarily to express my thanks. Thank you for being so supportive of a free and independent Ukraine. Thank you for your loyalty to democracy. And thank you for your opposition to Russia's imperialist ambitions.
Ohrožují východní a střední Evropu. Děkuji vám.
Australia, at the other end of the world, has also pledged to provide lethal military equipment to Ukraine. This comes after an earlier offer of non-lethal military equipment, medical supplies and a $3 million contribution to a NATO trust fund for the support of the besieged country.
The Ukrainian people have showed tremendous strength and tremendous resolve, but the situation remains terribly concerning. But I am pleased that we've seen an accelerating and increasingly strengthened response from Western democracies in standing up against what is thuggish brutality for which there's no justification.
The European Union has announced that it will provide $502 million for arms and assistance to the Ukrainian army, and further $56 million for supplies like fuel and protective equipment.
As the war in Ukraine rages on and Ukrainians fight bravely for their country, the European Union steps up once more its support for Ukraine and the sanctions against the aggressor that is Putin's Russia. For the first time ever, the European Union will finance the purchase and delivery of weapons and other equipment to a country that is under attack.
And another taboo has fallen these days. The taboo that the European Union cannot use their resources to provide arms to a country who is being aggressed by others. Yes, they are unprecedented times, because the war is back in our borders, and that's why it is a defining moment for the European history.
Israel is sending 100 tons of humanitarian aid to assist civilians caught up in the fighting in Ukraine.
Export controls similar to those that they...
The United Kingdom is preparing a hit list of Russian oligarchs to target with sanctions.
Export of all dual-use items.
We've put support into the Ukrainian Navy. We've supplied anti-tank weapons, which are being used by the Ukrainians. And we continue to supply defensive weaponry for the Ukrainians to use.
As the war rages on in the streets of Ukraine, people in different parts of the world have come out on the streets in show of solidarity. The appeal is to stop the fighting, to bring back peace.
Chi fa la guerra dimentica l'umanità.
People making war forget humanity. They don't start from the people. They don't look to real life of people. Instead, they put ahead of everything their individual interest of power. They entrust the perverse and diabolic logic of weapons, which is the farthest from God's will. And they leave behind common people who want peace. And common people are the real victims in every conflict.
It was 5 days ago, close to 100 hours ago, that Russian tanks came into Ukraine. But 5 days later, they haven't been able to capture either Kiev or the second largest city, Kharkiv, though they are in control of several important centers, including Chernobyl in the north and Odessa in the south. There is intense fighting in the Donbas region too. But beyond that, sanctions are beginning to have its impact on Russia. There were systematic sanctions, and each level they are now being intensified. The pinch is now being felt by the people in Russia.
Long queues outside ATMs in St. Petersburg, the second largest city in Russia. People hoarding up on cash, afraid it may run out. Afraid of what the unprecedented economic sanctions will cost them. There is deep uncertainty everywhere. The restrictions on Russian banks could trigger shortages of cash and disrupt payment systems. The move to block some Russian banks from the SWIFT global payment system and freeze the Bank of Russia's reserves are expected to deal a severe economic blow. While Russian banks maintain they will not be impacted much, they have reportedly asked their customers to carry their bank cards with them, saying mobile payment systems may not work.
Those consequences are very unpleasant indeed. I used to live in the 21st century carrying bank cards around. Everything is installed on my smartphone, all bank applications. I haven't been using cash for 5 years probably.
While fires rage in war zones in Ukraine, Russia is also firefighting, scrambling to contain the damages caused by Western sanctions. Ruble, the Russian currency, was trading at 80 to a dollar on Friday. Today, it plunged nearly 40%, trading at around 110 to a dollar. This prompted the Russian central bank to jack up its interest rates from 9.5% to an incredibly high 20%, hoping to arrest the fall of ruble and control inflation. In comparison, the bank rate in India is 4.25%. Russia also kept its main stock exchange shut for the third straight day, temporarily shielding stocks from the war. For Russia, the biggest blow is the freezing of its central bank assets overseas. Russia has around $630 billion in forex reserves, of which a little less than half is in US, UK, Germany, Japan and France. This greatly reduces President Vladimir Putin's ability to use this money to protect the economy. The West is meanwhile also striking at what hurts the Russian bear most, its oil and gas reserves. British Petroleum has announced it will exit Russian oil major Rosneft and is even willing to take a $25 billion hit in the process. Some European nations have already announced a ban on Russian flights and restrictions on Russian state media. Bureau Report, India Today TV.
As the rush to train stations continues, we bring you more reports on this impending deadline and the desperation of people to get out of the national capital, Kiev. We'll also get you much more on ground reports from strife-torn Kiev. A quick break. Back with lots more. Stay with us. India's Operation Ganga to bring back Indians trapped in Ukraine is now in top gear. 4 ministers, including Jyotiraditya Scindia, Hardeep Puri, Kiran Rijiju and General VK Singh, are in 4 countries bordering Ukraine. The effort is to sort out problems that are being faced at the borders and bring people as quickly as possible out of Ukraine. But the bigger problem that is being faced is just in getting to those borders. I spoke to a number of students who say getting out of the universities, getting to the train station and getting a train to go to the borders is a battle in itself. We bring you this report.
Young Indian faces in a faraway land at war. A country they had gone to study in for their futures, now broken and battered by shells.
This is the situation of our current bunker. They are not provided with any basic facilities.
Amidst the heightened fear and tension that has gripped the large Indian student community in Ukraine, the Modi government has pushed things into maximum gear. 4 top ministers have been deployed to personally be on the land borders surrounding Ukraine to ensure the smooth evacuation of every student. After 5 days of total panic and fear amidst the Russian invasion, a big move that could provide some comfort to worried Indian parents back home. Minister Scindia has been deployed to Ukraine's border with Romania and Moldova. Minister Rijiju to Slovakia, Minister Hardeep Singh Puri to Hungary, and evacuation veteran Minister General VK Singh to the border with Poland.
These special envoys will be traveling to these countries basically to coordinate and oversee the evacuation process there, on the ground. If situation permitting, you might also find them going to the as close as possible to where the evacuation happening.
Thousands remain stranded in Ukraine, and India is making an effort to get its citizens out as quickly as possible. And this is a task that's easier said than done, because any Indian assistance will only be possible at the borders and beyond. Here in Ukraine, whether it's the capital Kiev or multiple other cities, getting out to those borders is virtually fighting a war against many hostile elements, including the weather.
This is the waiting room of Bucharest Airport, which has turned into a waiting room for Indian students, some who have turned up on their own.
Sending out a powerful message of national solidarity and Bharat's big bridge for young India. The government affirms that no student will be left behind. Bureau Report, India Today.
China seems to have abandoned its citizens. India's Operation Ganga is in top gear. There are multiple ministers out at multiple borders trying to help people who reach the borders come back to India as quickly as possible. India Today's contributor Rajesh Pawar spoke to one such Chinese national trapped here in Ukraine, desperately now appealing to government of India to help him get back to his country. We bring you this report.
A national capital under siege.
In case of an invasion, these are heavy concrete blocks being placed, which will also serve as a kind of...
A population locked down under an aggressive invader that has surrounded the city. Kiev has changed completely in last 120 hours. From a modern metropolis to a broken ghost town. And while the Indian government mounts a meticulously and devastatingly difficult operating to pull everyone out against all odds, a stunning moment in the heart of Kiev.
Would you like your government to make a similar effort to take you out of Ukraine right now? Yes? And are you in touch with your embassy, telling them that you want to get out, the Chinese embassy here?
Yeah, it's preparing.
Preparing, still preparing.
Yeah.
You heard that right. A Chinese student in the heart of Kiev, requesting the Indian government's help to get out of Kiev. It is only during war, they say, that the human realities emerge, and the voices of these Chinese students speak loud and clear. An affirmation of the Indian government's work to rescue its own.
Have you heard about Indian government is making such a big effort to take students by road to Romania and all?
Yes, I know it. I know yesterday, right?
Yes.
Yesterday, some Indian people to Poland.
Poland and Hungary and Romania, yes.
Yeah, I think it's...
I know you have all been through a
so strong is the Indian government's reputation on the ground.
But know this.
Though its embassies and officials that work has clearly spread about the rescue muscle Delhi has deployed.
I know now all your family and friends are waiting for you, so let's go and meet them.
Word on the street is the Indian embassy in Kiev, one of the best and only fully functional embassies in Kiev, has guided and protected Indian nationals far more than any other embassy, including China. But you don't have to take their word for it. This Chinese student's plea will echo across the world. The Indian government's priority is to rescue Indian nationals, but in several evacuations before. Foreign nationals have been helped as well.
Here we talk to some Chinese students who also want to go back to their country, but unfortunately so far their government, unlike the Indian government, have not made any effort. Indian government is one of the best here embassies and government which is making so much efforts to get their students out.
We will keep you posted. With Rajesh Pawar in Kiev, Bureau Report, India Today.
Every weapon in the armory is being used to defend Ukraine. In fact, People are signing up in large numbers to join the resistance force, whether as territorial army personnel or local militia. Those who are unable to join the forces are becoming a part of the cyber force. There are also others who are making Molotov cocktails. A brewery in Kiev is now no longer manufacturing beer, but providing their bottles for Molotov cocktails or petrol bombs to be hurled at Russian tanks, armored personnel carriers and troop carrier vehicles in an effort to stall the advance of the Russian soldiers. We bring you this report.
In western Ukraine's main city, Lviv, employees at the Pravda brewery have joined the resistance against Russia. The brewery has switched from producing beer to making Molotov cocktails or petrol bombs. This after Ukrainian Ministry of Defense took to social media urging civilians to make Molotov cocktails to neutralize the occupier.
Why have we decided to make Molotov cocktails instead of brewing beer? The answer is simple, because we can. Everyone is doing what they can and what they know how to. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, until now there was no necessity to use Molotov cocktails. Ukrainians over the past few years have found themselves in a situation where they had to fight for their freedom, including fighting with Molotov cocktails.
The brewery is producing cocktails for the Ukrainian Territorial Defense Forces, made up of civilians who've responded to President Zelensky's call to take up arms.
We sent Molotov cocktails to our barricades in Lviv. We are trying to send as many as we can to the areas near Lviv. We sent some to Kiev as well. I hope they will get there because we later learned that a bridge en route has been blown up.
While Molotov cocktails might seem ridiculous compared to Russian tanks and rockets, they are part of Ukraine's urban warfare that has stunned not just the world, but even Russia. The cocktails can be made easily. A glass bottle containing petrol or any other inflammable substance is used to create fire on a target.
We will either be victorious or there will be total collapse. Capitulation is not acceptable. After capitulation, they will face partisan war. There is no way they can win. They can only win if they destroy us all, and this is not possible.
They may be at war, but these Ukrainians haven't lost their sense of humor. Their bombs and beers are interestingly packaged, with insults directed at Russia's President Vladimir Putin.
There should be no bloodshed, but what they are doing now is beyond war. It is war terror. It is impossible to describe. I have a lot of friends in other places, and the stories they tell me are simply horrific. It is a terror that must be stopped. The best way to stop is not arms, more bloodshed, but words. But if words do not work, we will use everything.
According to Google search data, searches for how to make Molotov cocktail have shot up drastically in Ukraine in the last few days. It is clear that Ukrainians won't give up. Bureau Report, India Today.
This is the story of the battle between unequals, a very powerful global superpower Russia and a much weaker Ukraine. But this is also the story of David versus Goliath. This is the story of Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky, a comedian for decades who's successfully rallied his entire country to resist the Russian attack. For 100 hours and counting, they've successfully resisted the Russians. Will they continue to do so remains the big challenge.
Всім добрий вечір. Лідер фракції тут, голова Офісу президента тут, прем'єр-міністр Шмигаль тут, Подоляк тут, президент тут.
His is the voice of defiance, a call from the heart that has gone out and firmed the defense of Ukraine against the forces of invasion.
here to protect my wife, my family, myself, my country from the Russian invasion.
We will fight for our land and we will kill all Russians.
If somebody give me a weapon, I will fight. I'm not afraid.
Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, had everything wrong about being a wartime leader of a nation invaded. He's from Jewish stock in Eastern Europe with its history of anti-Semitism. His family spoke Russian. He grew up speaking the language of the invader. He happened to be a comic by profession. In 2019, the comic actor decided to run for presidency. And people took that as a joke. He called his party the Servant of the People Party. The outcome was comic relief. Volodymyr Zelensky won 73% of the votes and promised to bring peace to the restive eastern regions of Luhansk and Donetsk. What came was war. Not with Russia, but with his Russian namesake, Vladimir.
Once again, I appeal to the servicemen of Ukrainian armed forces. Don't let neo-Nazis and Banderites use your children, your wives, and old people as human shields. Take power into your own hands. It seems that it will be easier for us to come to terms with you than with this gang of drug addicts and neo-Nazis who settled in Kiev and took all Ukrainian people hostage.
Volodymyr Zelensky was born in 1978 into a Russian-speaking Jewish family of the then Soviet Socialist Republic of Ukraine. His father was a professor of mathematics and his mother had studied engineering. The town of his birth, Kiev, stands next to Babi Yar, where 33,771 Jews were shot and thrown into a ravine over the course of 2 days in 1941. Zelensky studied law and earned a degree in it, only to found a TV entertainment company. Zelensky found success in his vaudeville act. He and a few friends created a comedy troupe that became a famous act not just in Ukraine, as well as other Russian-speaking regions of a post-Soviet world. The prism through which Volodymyr Zelensky viewed the world changed when Vladimir Putin invaded the land of his birth in 2014. That was what made him take his first political step. He donated a fortune to arm the then weak army of Ukraine. He chose his side when he relocated his production company to Kiev and began to fully master the Ukrainian language. Something that was to be a big help when he played the most successful comic role of his life. In the TV series Servant of the People, Zelensky plays a school history teacher whose rant against the rampant corruption in government gets recorded without his knowledge by a student and is posted on social media. The video goes viral, and without even wanting the job, the teacher gets elected president of Ukraine. And then, through set pieces, bumbles his way to become a heroic leader of his country. On 20th of May 2019, facts overtook fiction when the 41-year-old Volodymyr Zelensky took the oath of the highest office in Ukraine. And when the new president had to make his inaugural address, he said, "It wasn't just me who took the oath." He said, "Each of us put a hand on the Constitution and each of us has sworn loyalty to Ukraine." It was an oath of loyalty that the unlikely politician would prove himself worthy of in the conflicts to come. Despite the fact that entertainers entering politics are viewed, if not with suspicion, but certainly with skepticism.
Наявною у нас інформацією ворог позначив мене як ціль номер 1, мою родину як ціль номер 2.
President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine is believed to be number one on Vladimir Putin's hit list. Western intelligence agencies have claimed this, and Zelensky himself has acknowledged it. He says his family is second on the list, but that he and they will remain in Ukraine. He categorically turned down a US offer of evacuation. Instead, he asked for arms.
Nobody will force us Ukrainians to give away our freedom, our independence, our sovereignty. But it looks like the Russian leadership is trying to do it just by the way of destroying their own country.
To prove that he is still there and not running away, the president of Ukraine has been regularly posting self-taken videos in front of the very recognizable presidential palace, telling the people of Ukraine that he is living up to his promise, even if he has to die for it. Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, is playing the role of a lifetime. He has already given a performance that has made him a hit across the world. This unlikely wartime leader of his country has won the hearts and minds of people around the world. His actions has more than established the contrast with his nemesis, with whom he shares a first name, the meaning of which ironically means ruler of the world. When Vladimir Putin ordered his troops to invade Ukraine, he possibly made one miscalculation. He had not accounted for the stellar performance that his opponent was capable of giving, a role that has touched the heartstrings of audiences across the globe. Whatever be the outcome of this war in Ukraine, history will record Zelensky as the hero in shining armor, while Putin has already joined the ranks of all-time world villains like Hitler and Stalin. When the world's a stage and everyone is but an actor in it, there is no doubting that Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine stands at the edge of that stage, where life meets performance and only truth shines forth.
Is Russia about to launch an all-out attack, a big attack on Ukraine's capital of Kiev? And is the capital, which hasn't fallen just yet, key to President Putin's domination and complete invasion of Ukraine? Let's go across to Gaurav Sawant, who's been in Kiev, to understand what that's like. Gaurav, it's really good to see you. I wish you were reporting in better circumstances. It is your birthday today, so I first of all wish you a very happy birthday. But getting to the heart of what we are talking about right now, the possibility of a big attack on Kiev. What are you hearing in the city?
Shiv, there is panic in Kiev as you and I speak right now, because people are leaving this city in droves. They're leaving in thousands and thousands, getting to this main train station here in Kiev, trying to get out to the first available city on the first available train. It's easier said than done given the crowds that are here. The train station is unable to handle these numbers, but the apprehension is that there could be a massive attack either tonight or in the next 24 hours, and that's why people want to be out of harm's way, Shiv.
We already know that cruise missiles have been hitting certain localities in Kiev. We've seen that large armored column that's headed, on the highway towards Kiev as well. How well defended is the city, and how important is it for Putin to take Kiev for total domination in this?
Shiv, the effort is on the Ukrainian army's side to defend Kiev as well as possible, and they do have their anti-tank guided missiles and their columns strategically placed on all the major roads and the access that leads to Kiev. But how long will they be able to defend the Kiev is the big question. As far as you very rightly mentioned, cruise missiles have been hitting Kiev regularly, but these have been aimed at very specific targets, at strategic airfields across this country. 14 airfields targeted, ammunition dumps targeted, fuel stations targeted, fuel dumps targeted. But right now, the apprehension is that now the attack, the scope of attack, Shiv, now would be much wider, leading to more destruction in an effort to get the Vladimir Zelensky regime to give up and surrender, which he, of course, just today he said there is no way that Ukraine will surrender.
We'll have to see where this goes. Stay safe, my friend. I will keep coming back to you. Thanks very much. So that was Gaurav Sawant in Kiev. He's been there for the last few days. The capital city has been able to hold off Russian forces for the last few days. But has that defense now come to an end? What's next for Kiev? We'll have to wait and watch.
It's already -2 degrees here in Kiev. It will be colder tonight, but the fear is stalking hearts of people who are unable to leave Kiev. We will continue to report from ground zero, but that is all we have for you on this special broadcast from Kiev with cameraman Pavan Kumar in Strifed on Kiev, Ukraine. Gaurav Sawant for India Today.